Hello, and welcome to another edition of History After Hours podcast. My name is Kevin Pumphrey, and with me, as always, is Mr. Ron Franklin. Once again, we are history teachers, high school history teachers at Lakeside High School in Hot Springs, Arkansas. And this episode of the podcast is another live recording at Kollective Coffee and Tea in downtown Hot Springs. It is Tuesday, December the 3rd, 2019, wrapping up a great year for us. We appreciate all the support, all the people listening, and all the students. On this podcast, we have a special guest, Dr. Christopher Thrasher from National Park College, a history teacher that is well-versed in all sorts of types of history. And another special guest today is Mr. Kevin Rogers, the owner of Kollective Coffee. And he has been gracious enough to let us record once a month here during the school year. And he is a very big fan of history and politics, so it was great to have him on the podcast for the very first time as well. Like always, the students asked tons of insightful questions. Some we had to give very brief answers to because there was a line of students ready to give or ask questions for us to discuss and talk about. Once again, we want to thank everyone for the support this year. We had a great year. Make sure to share our podcast. You can find us on Apple and Google and other places. So, yes, with that, enjoy the podcast. Okay, we are at Kollective Coffee. It is, Tuesday, December the 3rd. And we have a line of students ready to ask some engaging questions. So, Who's first?
I'm Abby Poole, and my question is, because of such controversial topics circling media and the political scene, there's a big rift between our main two political parties. Do you think that rift could ever mend?
Do we think the rift ever could mend? Do you really think it should? I mean, that's the whole point of having two or more, so they can argue about things. That's part of it. I mean, I know they want to come together and cooperate, but, part of the dialogue is the differences, though, which drives, right?
Yeah, and I think, there's always been a rift, right? It seems more extreme probably than it really is with today's current clickbait media. And everything gets blown out of proportion, and everything is the end of the world. So there has been, this is why we have a two-party system going back to the very beginning, is because there's always been a divide between philosophy in this republic. I do think it's elevated and probably even a little bit more exaggerated today. But that's a good question. Should it be healed, or what's y'all's opinion?
I feel like the rift needs to be closed a bit, otherwise government ceases to be effective in terms of getting anything done. But I think the remedy to that is going to have to come from government and how they react with media, because media has changed really quickly over the last 10 years for sure with the advent of social media. And I think that's where the change has to come from, is in government, how they relate through those channels. Because right now I would say that they're just using it to divide further, widening the rift.
Yeah, I think history makes me an optimist. So I certainly understand people look and they say, things are terrible and things are bad right now. But, I'm always reminded of the fact we fought a civil war. 500,000 Americans, more than 500,000 Americans were dead. We found a way to come back from that. I'm pretty sure we can come back from Twitter feuds.
Yeah, I think as history teachers, we have a different perspective because, and isn't it interesting, it kind of gets molded by whatever the last thing you heard was. Like, when I'm teaching about the Civil War, this doesn't seem too bad. But then, of course, I'll listen to a podcast that will make me think it's the end of the world. But I think as history teachers, I think it's easier. Maybe we can more quickly put things into perspective and be able to kind of look at the scope of things and maybe not be too outrageous.
I think that's a big part of what bothers me about modern sort of the media-mindedness that people think that they have. everything seems like it's the end of the world when it's, and then next week it's the next new end of the world scenario, and it doesn't work that way. So we tend to survive it.
Okay, next question.
My name is Savannah Godwin, and in the book The Glass Castle, which was something we were reading for AP Lang, the main character didn't grow up with a lot, so she was forced to make really creative toys and do things for fun when she was little. And so this leads me to my question, do you think creativity is something you were born with or something that you learned due to adversity, and why?
Seems like creativity is, a lot of times, I think, out of boredom. People go, I need something to do. What could we do that's not the same old stupid thing? I think he sort of forces you into that. I wonder. I think that adversity does that as well. I think that creative people have maybe. I've heard I don't know if it's a stereotypical sort of commentary. People who are actors or comedians, they tend to be better. Maybe if they've experienced some sort of deep trauma in their lives. Although I don't think that has to be true, but maybe it is. Maybe they're dealing with some sort of pain, and this is a cathartic process for them. Possibly, but I think that you can just be creative. I don't know that you have to be born with it or whatever. I think you can develop it.
Yeah, I think it's like anything else. I mean, some people are naturally athletic, but then so everybody has a baseline that you start with. You're giving this, so good luck, and then you can develop it to your potential. But there's a cap. I'll never be as good at basketball as LeBron James. I'll never be able to paint like whoever. But I can develop my own thing, and it shouldn't limit you. Because, look, when I listen to a guitar player or a singer or somebody that's way more talented, not my own family, it does sometimes go, man, I'll never be that. But that's not the point. And it should inspire. Because the good thing about being creative or any talent that you might be trying to improve is it seems like you can always improve it. So, your limit might be here, but in some ways you really never reach it because you can just always keep going and improving. So that's kind of my take on.
Do you think insanity helps?
What's that?
Do you think being insane would help with creativity?
Yeah, probably.
I just see things very differently than you do.
And insanity takes away the inhibitions. So you can be more creative.
Okay. Ooh, I like that thought. Yeah, I'm too inhibited to explore my creativity.
Yeah, if you look at like the history, like Picasso, he just decided to go another direction, and there was a few other people toying with that, but he just went against everything, and everyone called him the worst ever, and now he's remembered as one of the best ever. So you never know how He might not be the best realistic painter, even though he tried that, by the way. He tried realism. But when he started doing his own abstract art, it took off, and he seems to be one of the best that ever did it.
He was very good at self-promotion, too, by the way. I mean, that dude knew how to... I mean, he was like...
It's kind of like a carny.
If there had been Twitter, then I wonder what he would have been able to use that for, because... I mean, the guy would go around signing napkins and go, here, this is awesome. You should have this in your life, and it's going to be worth millions someday. People are like, oh, cool. Maybe that's true.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
All right. Next question.
My name is Ria Patel, and my question was, with our landfills filling up with plastic and our increasing need to lessen our use of single-use plastics, how would you ever decrease that use in medicine? Because... it has revolutionized the way that medicine has worked, because instead it decreases like the spread of disease and re-sterilizing products.
I remember when they first said plastic's going to save the world, and now here we are, 30 years later, plastic's going to destroy the world. I've got this weird sort of long game mindset about plastic. I think it'll outlast us, all these people who go, save the planet, what they really mean is save the people. The planet's going to be fine whether we're here or not, And so after we have demised and gone about our way and something else has risen to take our place, there'll just be some things floating around the planet, but it will shake us off like we weren't even here. I think that seems dark maybe, but I don't mean it to be. I don't know that we... Maybe I think recycling.
Yeah, recycling would be a good answer.
Really recycling, not just sort of this kind of baked thing that we do.
There's a huge amount of biodegradable plastics on the market now too, and that seems to be increasing every day. Even just walking into a Kroger today, they had a plastic cup and bowl set that was made out of wheat. So those things are hitting the market full force. I mean, the plastics that we use even here in the shop are biodegradable.
Something I read the other day that they've learned eats like cellulose, because I remember they were doing big stories on the landfills are filled with diapers and those will never biodegrade. Well, there's actually some sort of bacteria that loves to eat cellulose, and it will actually break it down in just a matter of days, I think. I may be wrong about that, but
so I know they've tested a lot of that in the ocean.
They're developing
as well.
things though, right?
Enzymes that'll eat plastic.
Yeah. Cool.
Then we'll find out the output is crazy.
I remember I read a newspaper article from like 1904, and it said, "Oh no, the horse feces are going to kill us. We have so many horses, and the cities are getting bigger, and we're all going to be drowned under this." And then what happened is, of course, the Model T comes along, which creates a whole nother problem. But now we don't have to ride a horse feces. Well, I think it's that same kind of progression. Like, yeah, plastic thing's terrible now. But I think something like biodegradable plastics.
What's the whole idea that we're saving trees, use plastic? I think that was the big push.
Yeah.
And now that we want to use more paper because it's renewable resource.
When you think about individuals too, like especially when you get about 30 years old, if you see an adult from 30 to 60 to 80, whatever, if they make a dramatic change in their life, it's usually because either they nearly died, they have a brand new perspective on life, or somebody around them got really, like it took something probably dramatic to make them make a big change in their life. And I'm wondering if like that's going to have to happen on Earth for humans to go, okay, we got to get this serious now.
Well,
are we waiting for the big disaster before we
How many more big disasters do we need, though? I mean, the entire continent of Australia is on fire.
Right. But once again, that's Australia.
It's still a continent.
I know. But that's the thing. It's like
because it's down under, nobody cares.
If you take Earth as a global community, what percentage of people have to be affected? I think global markets are going to have to start shaking.
Do you think it's going to have to? Well, yeah, but I mean,
and still, even when that happens, you're still going to have a controversy on what's the way forward. Like we can all talk about climate change, but then when you start getting to practical, the United States could go all in.
We're going to end fossil fuels. Yeah, well, that's not an easy solution. You can't just chop that off and say, well, now what? There's a lot of things that have to be
And plus you need more than just us to end fossil. We need China, we need India, we need a bunch of countries to end fossil fuels.
Well, if you want to be really dark, look at Easter Island. You had 20,000 people on an island paradise who were paying no attention to the environment. This is Jared Diamond Collapse, if you want to know everything about this. And so they chopped down all the trees, destroyed their environment. And then when the Europeans showed up, there were 2,000 left who had eaten the other 18,000. The island found an equilibrium. So the Earth will find an equilibrium.
Yeah.
Just may involve us eating each other.
It's a distinct possibility.
Yeah, we won't be worried about the Mexicans crossing the border. We're going to be worried about people from Florida and California coming to Arkansas to stay dry.
It's the opposite of the Steinbeck novels. People from California trying to come here.
Yeah. All right. That was dark, but there you go. That's part of the podcast. Realities of life. Okay, next question.
My name is Abigail Webb. I have a question, obviously. So to what extent do you think a parent's socioeconomic status will affect their child's personality?
Does the socioeconomic status of the parents control their level of anger and resentment towards that child who may be a burden in their life? I mean, that's, because I know a lot of people, there's a lot of poor people on the planet who are really not bad to their children, right? And so I don't think that has to be a factor. On the other hand, I know a lot of wealthy kids who are miserable, who don't have a good association with their folks at home. So I don't know that necessarily has the thing to do with it, because you can't provide certain luxuries for your child. Do you still love them? Do you still provide for them? Do you still care for them? Am I out of the house? That might be something to think about. Do you have a stable home life, or are you there by your freaking self because your mom's got to work 2 jobs because she has no other choice to try to pay the rent and get everything else done for you? Or do you have to go and work yourself? And do you have a loss of a family dynamic and a support system? Can you find that support system somewhere else in your community? Those are the questions, really, I think, that matter more than anything else. Can it push it and make it more difficult for people? Yeah, I think it can, but I don't think it's zeroed in on that one dynamic.
I've never seen any evidence that impacts personality. I mean, I think there's lots of good data that indicates that it does impact your socioeconomic future. If your parents are poor, that's hard to climb out of. If your parents are rich, that gives you a nice head start. But there's plenty of poor people that are very happy, and there's plenty of rich people that are miserable. So I don't know that personality is all that relevant to it.
I think that their personalities.
Well, it depends on what you mean by
make a difference.
Personality.
Huh?
It kind of depends on what you mean by personality. It definitely changes your perspective on just about everything. I did a little research in my undergrad class on the poverty student and the rich, affluent student. And teachers generally are from middle-class families, so we teach from a middle-class perspective. And a lot of students don't come from that perspective at all. They view material things very differently. And you can see this in a lot of poorer areas where they value certain material objects like clothes and shoes and cars more than they do paying their bills, paying their taxes, which are more middle class. And I'm not saying that does not vary, but it definitely, I think, it affects your perspective on what's important and what's not important.
The value systems. The
value of things, yeah. And, sometimes they'll be wearing the newest clothes, but they go home to a home that doesn't have air conditioning. Or, and for a middle-class family, that might be completely crazy. But from their perspective, that is reality and all they've known. And that's more important than...
How often do people challenge the systems that they grow up inside, though? We explored that a little bit in my Euro class in particular, or actually in my world class as well. Are you apt to follow whatever behavioral patterns you've seen set before you, or do you challenge that and go, you know what, I'm not going to be that way? Maybe it goes back to what you said. You had to have some sort of thing in your life to go, you know what, that's a brick wall here, and it's an obstacle that I need to get over and around, and I have to leave them behind. I don't know, but I think that's an individual choice.
Yeah, that question could go on. We could talk about a lot of implications.
That's a good question.
Of how much government should be involved in changing that, and that could get us down a rabbit trail. Okay, next question.
Hi, my name is Adrian Steelman, and my question is: should there be a Super Olympics where all the contestants are allowed to use drugs of any kind, such as steroids or cocaine or anything they want?
Yeah, it's called Russia.
Yeah. Is it that pro wrestling?
I would watch that.
There is what's the documentary on Netflix about the cyclist, and they found out basically they uncovered that Russia in the last several Olympics did just do that.
Right.
Doping, and they just have these super athletes, and they just juice them to the gills. And they just come out there and dominate, and then it's like, yeah,
well,
makes sense. But
it becomes a philosophical question: what's the purpose of sport? If the purpose of sport is just to provide us something to watch and marvel at, then yeah, absolutely. Load them up. Let's see what happens.
Bread and circuses.
I don't know how cocaine and meth mix, but it would be interesting to see somebody bicycle after they've had a nice dose of some kind of combo. On the other hand, if you, there's consenting adults. Who knows?
A lot of cocaine in baseball in the 70s.
On the other hand, if you go for this kind of classical kind of Greek idea that sports are all about spirituality and all about expanding the limits of what humans can do and showing off the best and the brightest and the most amazing, then it is a terrible idea. And then no, you shouldn't do it. So I don't know which side do you come on. Are you a Roman in the Colosseum, or are you a Greek in the Olympic Stadium?
I don't know. Maybe the separate set of games where if you want to just run that full tilt and then be this person, as opposed to the Greek idealism. Maybe let's have this for those folks that want to be more pure and at heart and in
two
intent.
Divisions.
Yeah, two divisions for that.
This is the same argument for gender identification or the transgender community as far as competing, especially for men that are transitioning to women or women that transition to men, and want to compete with the sex they identify with. It just happened last year where a biologically born male decided to prove a point and went to England, identified as a female, and then broke all the women's records, like in deadlift and all that. And because there was no hormonal process. And so this is so when you talk about sports and competing, this is another philosophical thing. There's categories, and you have to wonder, it gets complicated. Not that not everybody should be able to compete how they want, but we're seeing it now in MMA, which brings up a whole different thing.
Well, okay, so what about just eliminate gender classifications in general and just say, look, whoever wants to compete against whomever, let's just do that, and then just go for broke and see who wins.
Yeah.
That might be the way to go.
As long as it's all voluntary, but man, it still gets kind of, because, would there be any women be able to play in the NBA if you're taking that many people?
Maybe.
Yeah, there's some.
Maybe. But that's the thing. But would that be fair then?
If all the teams were co-ed, then it would balance out, though, wouldn't you think?
So if you forced them to be co-ed, you'd have to have a certain number.
Well, then quotas have to come in.
So how do you feel about expanding that to fight sports? How do you feel about
to
a man
to what?
To fight sports, mixed martial arts, boxing?
I mean, again, you brought up consenting adults. I mean, should there be? I don't know why there wouldn't.
And then of course you got weight classes.
Yeah.
And then
maybe
this actually, I think we're in the infancy of this, and I think this will get progressively solved. It's just interesting to think about what will happen in 20, 30 years.
I'm just interested in the competition, honestly. Let's have great competition between athletes of whoever you happen to put in front of us. Again, I'm looking at it from a spectator, just that aspect of it. I think what would amp that up in all sports, though, is if the losers had to pay the winners. I think there'd be more effort from everybody.
Yeah.
Think about that in a boxing match. If the loser had to pay the winner.
Yeah. But in professional sports, money's involved.
We're only got paid.
And people want to see.
Yeah, or you only get paid if you win. Winner take all.
Then you're going to be looking at getting the best athletes. And then it opens up a whole other set of questions.
Okay.
Crazy. Next question.
My name's Carly Orr, and I was wondering, do y'all think that sports are getting too competitive at too young of an age?
I personally don't think so. I mean, it has gotten kind of hyper competitive, and maybe parental involvement in that is too much. But students, they push themselves.
Yeah.
And if that's what they're good at, then you should let them go unchained on that, I think.
I mean, I was a former athlete, and it was very competitive to me. I wasn't the best in the world, but, I mean, I haven't noticed an extreme explosion of competitiveness. It's competitive. It's always been.
It seems like the younger the kids are, though, it's more, like you said, it's more the parents than it is the kids themselves that want to compete. The kids just want to run around maybe, and have fun, where the parents are like, get him, Jimmy! I mean,
the parents are the worst. As a former coach, I think there's two things. The parents seem to be worse than the kids by far, but also when parents and or coaches really force kids at young ages to pick a sport. I mean, I get why the head football coach of the high school wants a young, promising football player to just play football and lift weights during the, I get that, but I do think that can, especially at certain schools, it really does a disservice to a student athlete who maybe wants to try several things and wait a little bit before they make
so
their
but
decision.
all right, so let's distill the question down. Like, how young is too young to really compete at a hardcore level, as opposed to learn skills, learn sportsmanship, yada yada? Then at what point do you flip that switch and go, okay, get them?
I think it depends on the sport,
I suppose.
Yeah, that's true. It depends on the sport, I think.
Do you think beauty pageants are competitive in a sporting kind of way?
Absolutely.
I mean, they're competitive.
You ever spend any time around
It can be
this?
ruthless, I think, especially from the parent stand, right? Didn't they have a whole show about that? Dance Moms, isn't that part of what that show's about, the ruthlessness of the parents?
Yeah, I'm torn on beauty pageants.
Yeah.
I'm not
it may be worse than most sports.
yeah.
Maybe.
The problem I have with, I'm probably going to offend a lot of people, but hey, that's what it's about. My only problem really with, because I do like Miss HSU, I do the sound and, I help out with all that. It's not that I don't support that. It's just when you get the kids, the little bitty ones, who really don't quite have a good grasp of what they're doing.
That's part of what I'm trying to say.
And then the judges go, because you're basically judging them on how well they walk, how good they look, how well they're dressed.
How well their false teeth fit.
Yeah, right, yeah. Or how big the hair, and then to tell those kids, okay, you're first, you're not good enough. Ugh, for a little bitty one,
Really,
I don't know what age.
Do you think the competition ought to be uplifting in some way, where you've competed well, right? I think we've had some criticism of, well, let's give everybody a trophy, that kind of stuff. That's not what I'm talking about. But I mean, especially at a young age, you don't want to kill a competitive spirit in a kid by telling him, well, you freaking sucked at that. Don't try anymore. That's what I'm trying to get across. How do we, where do you think that line is appropriately for you just to go, okay, you've developed enough mentally, physically, now just get it as hard as you can, right?
Yeah, once again, I think it does depend on the sport. And I think learning to lose is a valuable lesson in life. Not everybody gets a trophy. Not everybody can be number one.
Yeah, but you can still be encouraging.
Exactly.
And say, keep trying in spite of the fact that you lost.
Yeah. I mean, we have.
I'm not suggesting everybody gets a ribbon.
And people win and lose in that, I guess.
Yeah.
I guess still, maybe. When I was a kid, sixth grade's when it kind of got serious. And then seventh grade, it's real deal.
Nobody cared about our feelings when we were little kids. Like I said, I'm older than y'all, but they didn't. They were like, get over it. Yeah, okay. I mean, that's what you did. You cry for a little while, and then you get over it. Yeah, you learn.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't have a...
Learn to process your emotions, little kid.
Yeah, and sports do teach you very valuable things, I think. But how hardcore that should be and when, I think that varies per kid, too, not just per sport.
Kindergarten MMA.
Yes.
Octagons on
Winner
the playground. Yeah, jump off the monkey bars into the octagon. No.
I wanted to do that. I wanted to shut my classroom door, lock it, and just see what happens. Just let them go. Survival of the fittest. Who could make it out? Okay, next question.
My name is Cadence Barnett, and I wanted to ask, which of the four of you would you think would make the best president?
Oh, not me.
I'd nominate Ron Franklin.
Mr. Franklin.
Here's how I feel about this. I think that I could make good decisions and direct people well, but I cannot. This is actually why I haven't run for any kind of office. Tell you the truth, I can't stand the thought of campaigning, because you have to turn into this nasty sort of bitch, and I don't want to do that. Really, you have to call people out and dig up dirt and throw mud and defend this and defend that. And you have to be somebody that you're not, and go off and suck up to donors so that you can even be in the conversation about. They just talked about Bloomberg, right? Bloomberg just got in the race for president, and he qualified because he now crossed a threshold of donors. You had to have so much money to work with, or you don't even count. Your ideas don't count unless you've got so much money. And so that means that you've got to go off and sell yourself to people. And that doesn't appeal to me at all. The actual process of governing, I think I could be helpful. I don't know that I'd want to be the guy, but I wouldn't mind having some ideas that I have out there to influence the guy or whomever the person is in charge.
Franklin
but again,
Manifesto.
But seriously, seriously, campaigning seems asinine and counterproductive, in my opinion.
Agreed.
It's actually on the local level too. Even we have
you campaigned recently, so yeah.
Right. You have to pay a fee to your party just to run, which seems anti-democratic.
Yeah.
And it varies. It's set by your party. It doesn't go to the state or any part of the system. It goes to the party. So, for instance, if you wanted to run for a state representative position in Arkansas, well, you're going to pay either $3,000 or $5,000 unless you run as an independent just to run.
And that money goes to the party itself?
It goes to the party, yeah.
Huh.
And what they do with it, it's hard to say, because it doesn't necessarily go back into the candidates. Sometimes a party will donate money to a candidate, but the general philosophy is there's so many candidates throughout the state that they can't.
Who's taking that money?
Right, they can't give the money to a specific person because then that would be preferential over somebody else in their district.
But doesn't the idea that they took the money seem preferential?
Yeah, exactly. And it also, to me, it creates a divide. You know, we're supposed to be a country that, you know, they always talk about no matter what your background, you could be president. You know, well, you might not be president if you can't afford the, you know, $25,000 to sign up to run. Or you have to start your campaign financing before you even have a campaign.
Yeah, I cannot stomach the idea of having to falsify who I am to schmooze up to people with money just so I can be a voice on the campaign trail, right? That it sickens me, to tell you the truth.
And to win, how many promises do you have to make to get that money? And then you're in office. If you do make it, then you are obligated now. And it's like you're bought and paid for.
Who owns your representatives? Who owns them? That's an interesting question.
Campaign finance reform. This is one of the things that I think needs to be at the front of the list on reforming anything else.
You know what I think, though? Honestly, I think that rather than run for office, I would rather be who I am, doing what I'm doing to inform people so that they can make good decisions about who their leaders might be next, so that you can see clearly through the BS, right? Dig through the nonsense so that you can see who's actually doing what. Like I think that's what's missing in our politics more than anything else is transparency. Who is who? What are they really about? What do they really mean to do when they get there? Are they just saying these things so that they can get your support, so they can ignore you for the rest of the time, so they can go off on the campaign trail to get more money for the next election? I mean, that's my head's in a dark place. I don't know why that is today. It should be a happy time. It's almost Christmas, but I'm going down these weird paths. So I'd rather be a teacher.
That is one thing. Some of the Democratic candidates are refusing to take super PAC money, and that seems at least promising that they're not bowing down to the huge corporations. Now, some of them are, but at least some candidates are saying, I'm not taking, the big money.
Some of them are the corporations.
Oh.
No, that's true, yeah.
Yeah.
We've got more than a handful of billionaires.
Yes, and that's kind of what it takes to become president anyway. If you're a presidential candidate, you need about $1 billion. Okay, next question.
I'm Kaylin Hartzell, and my question is, what is y'all's best test-taking advice? Because finals are around the corner, so how can we as students reduce that stress and anxiety when it comes to taking tests and still enjoy the holiday season?
Study.
Start studying in August.
I think that is interesting. If you procrastinate, it's just naturally you're going to be more stressed out. It'll give you temporary relief as you push it to the next day, but then the next day comes and it's there. It's always hanging over your shoulder. So studying early and often seems to be better than trying to cram anything. But once again, there's no perfect system.
I'd say this too. Study with somebody or somebodies. Have a group of people that you can work with. And you can bounce ideas off of, or you can critique each other's work, or do you understand this thoroughly? That's more helpful than trying to shoulder that burden all by yourself. Get with people that you trust, who are in the same. They don't even have to be in the same class, but just on the same mindset that you can say, "Look, I need to talk this out." And if you can do that, then you've got it.
Anything you can do to understand your personal learning style too. I didn't discover until about my second year of college that I'm an auditory learner. And I would focus all my time in class trying to take perfect notes that didn't serve me in preparing for a test. Because I'm an auditory learner, if I sat and absorbed the lecture, I could hear that lecture in my mind when I went to take the test. So, and I think education's gotten a lot better now in terms of putting people in boxes in terms of what they excel at. But anything you can do to progress that and learning what your personal learning style is.
As far as test taking strategy for the night before you're about to take the test, so many people, let me just say two things. Study the things that you don't know rather than hammer the things that you already know and you're comfortable with. I've seen that be a mistake so many times, especially on AP tests. I'm going to study these things and I'm going to avoid the things I'm uncomfortable with because I don't really want to. No, go over the things you know, let that rest, and look at the things that you really are I'm not good with this. Hammer that and see what happens. But also on the night before, don't stay up super late trying to cram for these tests. It's not a good idea. Your brain has to process, and you have to sleep and get some good rest. Best thing you can do is maybe cover it a little early, 7, 8, 9 o'clock, but then eat a nice meal and go to freaking sleep and let your brain sort that information. You'll be much better with recall the next day.
I think one of the things that really helped me a lot was I didn't really know history till I tried to teach history, because actually saying it out loud and trying to explain people, you figure out where the holes are real fast. Yes. So by all means, if you have a study buddy, you can say, hey, let me explain photosynthesis. If they say, I don't have a clue what you're talking about, then you need to figure that out. On the other hand, I think you figure that out. And if you don't have somebody you can talk to, saying it to the mirror, you'll figure out pretty quickly yourself, oh, wait a minute, that made 0 sense. I need to go back and look at it again.
Yeah, a lot of people, they memorize a couple facts, or like the discussion questions I give you, you write down a sentence. I think I got it. But then if you just try to actually answer it out loud, you realize I don't know what I'm talking about. I know like 2 things when I need to know 20 things. So yeah, saying it out loud and teaching it, even if it's teaching yourself in the mirror, you're going to realize, oh wow, I don't know that at all. So that's good and helpful tips.
All right. Hi, my name is Zeta Guzmanacha, and I was wondering, since the Christmas season is coming and Santa Claus is coming as well, if we should shelter children believing in mythical creatures or beliefs in people like Santa Claus, Easter Bunny, Tooth Fairy, or just tell them that it's their parents, and if they don't be good, then they won't give them the gifts.
Okay.
Are you telling me there's no Santa Claus?
What are you saying?
What have
you
you
trying
done?
to ruin Christmas for everyone?
Here's my opinion on that. Having raised 2 children to adulthood and about to have a grandchild, there's plenty of time for reality. Right? I personally don't see a problem with the magic of childhood, because eventually we grow up and we learn that magic's not real, and that's a little sad. But then you also have to create that magic again in your own life in some way. You have to find something that intrigues you in the same manner. So I don't think that it's necessarily problematic. I'm related to people who have never let their kids believe in mythical this or that or Santa Claus or whatever. Like they're like, no, they will know the truth forever. I'm not going to lie to my child. Okay, you're cranky. Like that seems very cranky to me, to not let somebody have this. Children are so dreamy, I kind of remember being that kid that was just my head in the clouds. Where are you? I'm like, oh, I just kind of drift off somewhere, and I can come back to reality. But then you drift away again, and there's this cool little place that you kind of go in your head, or you act out some sort of scene with your friends in the yard, and that's make believe. But that's a form of mythology in a sense, because none of that we're seeing in our minds is real. So I don't know that that's counterproductive to allow that to be a thing, and then eventually reality then grasps you and you move on. But again, that's my opinion. Other people raise their children the way they want.
You could tie that into the earlier question on creativity, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Being able to believe in magic kind of like gives you that additional creativity to have to...
It kind of became a game.
How you can understand it.
Yeah. Oh, no, I agree. It kind of became a game for us as well. Like, how long can we keep this charade going? How long before they catch us, and and then they go, and there's that sobering moment. But it wasn't. I don't think that I was damaged by it, my psyche, and I don't think either of my children would be like, I wish you had told me the truth from the time. No, I mean, it was kind of fun. What's wrong with that?
I've kind of got an interesting thing, because my parents, I believed in Santa, and then I found out, and I do remember when I found out, and I was hurt. But I got over it, and I don't think I'm indifferent.
By the look on your face, you're still not quite. I don't think you've dealt with it completely.
I probably haven't.
I've never admitted it.
My ex-wife said we are not going to ever knowingly lie to our child, so she was against teaching Santa, and I kind of was for it because that's what I experienced.
Yeah.
But she has 2 siblings that believed, so she still had to act like. So she kind of was in on the magic in a way. She knew the truth. And she told me she was happy that she's so glad that y'all didn't do that.
Yeah,
but
that's a good point. Because my daughter's 3-ish years older than my son, and when she sort of realized, then we're like, okay, don't ruin it for your brother. And she was like, oh, okay, now you're part of that.
You're gonna screw your children up anyway in your own specific way. I mean,
yeah. I just don't have a problem with saying,
and I really don't either.
Here is the land of make believe, and let's enjoy this as long as we can.
I had a really good friend who had an interesting take on this. His rule was, he says, I just don't lie to my kids, period. He says, and if they ask me a direct question, I'm going to give them a direct answer. He said, now he would kind of play along, and they had Santa Claus and all that, but it was presented in a very kind of cartoonish, this is kind of a fun story.
Tongue-in-cheek.
Yeah, kind of tongue-in-cheek. This is a fun time. We do silly things. But at some point, all of his kids ended up asking him just point blank, and he just said, no.
And I think if a kid does that, like if they ask you point blank, I think they're at the point where they probably need to know that you probably don't want to go, no, it's real. Just keep believing it. So, yeah.
Well, the answer that we gave our children when they asked us that was like, when you stop believing, he stops coming.
Fear.
So you make the call.
Can they start praying to Santa?
Couldn't you guys, as history teachers, though, make the correlation with the fact that there was a real Saint Nicholas and?
Yeah, but most of the caricature that we have from for the Santa Claus that we see in our stories basically comes from Germanic, Odin basically stories.
Well, a lot of it comes from Coca-Cola.
Yeah, well, that's true too. Yeah, very good. Yeah, advertising, sell that Coca-Cola, man.
Yep.
Okay, next question.
All right, my name is LOI, and how much conflict do you think could have been avoided if we never forced Israel into being a country?
Wow.
What's this we stuff? I wasn't even around.
Wow.
That is a deep question.
All right, yeah.
Okay, this sounds like a y'all's question. I'll let y'all run with it.
How much conflict could we have avoided if we didn't force the issue and let
Now, by we, do you mean the United States? Is that where you're going with this? The UN.
The United Nations.
I mean, I don't know. You correct my history here. I don't think the UN really the Israelis declared independence.
Well, you have so we got to go back to like Ottoman Empire sort of stuff before World War I.
Let's go back to Moses.
Yeah, let's go. Let's travel back, shall we?
Abraham.
That's difficult to predict. If we go to the moment where we're post World War I, post World War II, and we've already had the Sykes-Picot Treaty, and they've already decided that there's going to be this British mandate, and the French are there, and we're there, and the Russians are there, and they're trying to figure out who's going to be what. And the Arabs are like, wait a minute, this is our territory. As the Ottoman Empire is breaking apart, I think there was going to be conflict over the territory as the system has to be replaced. Who's going to actually control the territory that is the Levant? It's been a hot spot for all of human history, seemingly, and so I don't know that we could have avoided all conflict, but I think this has been it was instantly controversial because you're forcing people out so that you can move people in who claimed that God gave it to them thousands of years ago, when other people say, well, our gods are real too. And so I don't think that we cared whether there was going to be conflict or not. Honestly, I think that we just said it's going to be there, we're going to make it happen, then we're going to immediately defend that. And I don't think it's so much about, from a political standpoint, this is just, again, my opinion, I think that we needed a democratic source in the Middle East as that area is trying to develop into something new. And I think that's one of the, I don't know that we had this huge push in the United States or anywhere else that's like, we must support the Jews. I mean, maybe there was some pathos because of the Holocaust aspect, but this had been in the works well before that scenario. I think it added to it.
Name a country that was formed that wasn't formed out of some kind of conflict.
True.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's inherent in the system. I think you're.
Yeah, I mean, if you go back far enough, somebody had to say, "Hey, this is mine, and you can't have it. And I'm willing to beat you up for it." I mean, Yeah, I don't know. That's a tricky question that I don't have a thorough answer for. I think that I can answer, though, that because we support it wholeheartedly without any kind of reservation or concern for what anybody else's opinion might be, Palestinian or otherwise, I think that we have generated more conflict than we thought we would. I think maybe that the idea was that we can control that territory and they can become democratic because we let them be democratic. I think it was short-sighted, ultimately.
Okay, very good. Next question.
Hi, Hi, I'm Lauren Boston. I want to know, who do you feel is the most overrated president in U.S. history?
Most overrated president in history. Yeah, this is on y'all. You're the U.S. guys.
Well, we've had this question before, and I had mentioned a couple, and then I remember I think you said JFK.
I did.
And then I thought that's it. That's gotta be the one.
I'll say JFK.
Yeah, I agree.
Just because he wasn't around long enough to do much.
And he gets inflated with civil rights and all these things that happened, which really happened as sympathy from his martyrdom in a way, or his death, his assassination. So does he get, how much credit does he get for that? For
it's not to say he didn't have the potential.
Oh, sure, correct, yeah.
But in terms of what he actually got done, I would agree with you guys.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that. I mean, what did he really do? There was a lot of ideology in the speeches, and he's young and vibrant, and we're trying to shift a corner.
He set some things in motion. I mean, I'll give him credit for that. He kind of started things going a certain direction, but he didn't actually live long enough to see them come to fruition.
Do you think that America was enamored with them because we don't have royalty of our own, and we sort of made them into that, this whole Camelot scenario? And then when he died, we made it even worse, that we just kind of go, oh my God, this. I mean, I don't know. I wasn't alive when the assassination happened, but I remember talking to my mom about it, and there were people who were upset and grieving, and others who were like, yeah.
Oh, yeah. I mean, we see it differently, but I think all presidents are overrated. We always give too much credit or blame to the president, no matter what it is. It's, and there's a lot more moving parts than just that. So, but yeah, I think JFK probably gets remembered as a little bit too much.
How could we de-glorify the office a little bit, turn it down a notch?
Rewrite
so
the
that's
Constitution and change the office of presidency.
Well, no, I mean, it's three co-equal branches, but somehow the president gets all the attention.
Well, yeah, we're talking about the Civil War and Lincoln basically taking and creating war powers and suspending habeas corpus and doing all sorts of stuff that the president never had done before. And of course, Jackson, there's so many times where the president's done things and Congress has kind of given up some of this. Consistently, the president has taken more and more power, and you're right. Are they really co-equal?
Doesn't seem to be. I mean,
doesn't seem to be anymore. No.
Especially when you have, let's use Trump for example, and Mitch McConnell sitting in his back pocket, or vice versa. I don't know which it really is.
Yeah, it seems like if our founding fathers came back and saw our current government, that might be a big shocking point, is to see how powerful the office of president by itself is.
Hi, my name is Connor Johnson, and I want to know what you guys think about Kamala Harris dropping out of the presidential race.
Yeah, I just heard about that. I didn't even think that was a thing. I mean, I knew her poll numbers were going down. But
when her campaign manager switched over to somebody else, I knew it was over. Bloomberg. Was it? They went to Bloomberg?
But I think that was in the works because the announcement came the day after that she stepped out.
Oh. And
her claim was in fundraising, which when you look at a crowded field of people running for that office, it's going to split the money.
She had some momentum, and then it sort of fizzled. And do you any ideas why that was? Because media didn't really. No, there are certain people they really focus on. I mean, you hear about Biden every single day. You hear about Bloomberg now every single day, but they haven't. Some of the what we would call quote unquote second tier or third tier candidates, like they just don't seem to get much press time. And maybe if they did, all right, let me back up and reassert the question. Do you think that the debate formats are crap? Because I do.
Oh, yes. Of course.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
They're not debates.
Yeah.
They are not debates.
They're just sound bites moments, right?
I mean, they're group, public appearances. They're not debates.
Why do we bother then? Just for the revenue of ads for the
follow the money.
Yeah.
What's cool is you do have candidates going on in these long form podcasts like Joe Rogan. I mean, Tulsi Gabbard.
Yeah, I just saw the Tulsi Gabbard one with Rogan. Yeah,
and Bernie Sanders was on there, and you can really dig into these subjects a little bit and see what they think. Now, of course, I think it'd be more interesting if you had somebody opposing them there and let them go back and forth a little.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of these second tier candidates are hanging on for the vice presidency. I would assume they're trying to get more supporters. So when whoever the nominee, you have a better shot at being a vice president.
Did she ever really have a shot, though? I mean, I wonder.
I don't know.
I think she felt she did at the beginning, but definitely I mean, it all goes back to the money.
And the crowded field probably drowned her out a bit too, I would think.
Yeah, well, the money gets diluted the more people that are running.
Yeah.
All right. Next question.
Still about donors, though, right? Ultimately.
Well, now it's about donors just to get on the debate floor.
Hi, my name is Henley Queen, and my question is, do you think America should do more to honor the lives of African Americans like Germany does with victims of the Holocaust?
Are you, like, which episode of history are you referring to specifically?
Since you
brought up Holocaust, yeah, you're thinking about reparations from slavery?
I'm thinking more like Jim Crow era and like lynchings and stuff.
How would you approach that? I don't know. Would the states have to be responsible for the numbers of? I mean, is it even documented that? I mean, how could you?
No, it's not documented. I mean, there's rough estimates and things like that. I don't know how you would do it specifically. And then if you're talking about reparations, that's a whole different subject that we could go down.
Or at least honor the fact that people were.
I mean,
I think it's a responsibility for us to honor it, because if we don't, it opens up the door for it to creep back in, and another point of our history.
Mm-hmm. I think one of the things that's kind of unique about the Holocaust is that you had this kind of unique political group come in. They were only in power for a few years. They did horrible, horrible things at just an incredible pace, and then they were removed by foreign powers who then installed their own regime. So it's very different than what you see in the United States, where you have this also horrific but very gradual kind of ebb and flow of a variety of things. You don't have those same hard lines that I think in some ways, as awful as the Holocaust is, makes it easier to deal with, or more easy to kind of get their hands around and deal with in a way that it's hard for us to do.
Do you think that's because of all the countries who were involved in going to war against the cause of the Holocaust? Because you can look at Turkey and the Armenians.
Yeah.
Right.
And there were more Armenians killed than Jews in the Holocaust.
Yep. Yeah.
But you don't hear anything about it. It's almost blanked out of history.
I mean, I think it was very convenient in a sense. It made really fantastic propaganda for the Soviets and for the Americans and for the other Western allies to say, there's this evil regime, and we didn't go to war with the Nazis because they were doing the Holocaust.
It was the Great War, but what was great about it?
Yeah. I think there should be something. Yeah. I mean, the Jim Crow era in particular is a heinous, and yet not thoroughly rooted out. There's still these harboring resentments on both sides, I think. But I know that there are places in this country, if you travel through, where you go, wow, are we in the 1950s? I mean, there are still very, there's a lot of dangerous DNA in some places that still hangs on to old prejudices and feels that those things should maybe come back. And so I think that the more we could talk about it and bring those things to light and say, here's what it was, and here's how it was so devastating and harmful and wrong, then maybe we can flush some of those other things out and we can move forward.
As a history teacher, I think it's one of the obligations of teaching history is we need to expose students to this time period. And a lot of history teachers will talk about slavery and then they go to civil rights. And they don't talk about Booker T. Washington and the lynchings that occurred and the Chicago race riot and all of these
Emmett Till.
Great Migration. And they skip a big chunk. And so I think for me personally, this is one of the things that I want to make sure that I focus on. But
I consider a good history teacher a muckraker. Like you need to uncover ugly truths, and then we need to process those and deal with them. And I don't think that we've done a great job of that as a country, honestly.
Well, and this is something too. I mean, you raise a great question. If this is, and I say this to students all the time, if this is something you're passionate about, make it your passion and do something, because this is how you see movements. This is how you see change happen in the world. If this is something that you think needs to be addressed and you need to be changed, do it.
Jump out and address it. Yeah.
Jump at it, and I think you may be surprised how many people would rally around you if they see, this idealistic young person, taking on this great issue, which maybe doesn't obviously impact them in a direct kind of way, but they are motivated by this great compassion for their fellow human beings, you might be surprised how far you could get with that.
Regardless of race, I think that just being a citizen of the South, it does impact us.
Sure.
Because it is part of the history of this state. I mean, we are sitting steps away from where a young man was lynched here in Hot Springs. Just right over here. I mean, if I just point across, we're there, basically where the fountain is. And so, but that is covered so many times in history because people don't feel, we shouldn't talk about that. We shouldn't think about that. We should just bury that and let it go. No, by God, you need to deal with stuff. Like, that's how we get better, is by dealing with the issues that we've got. And so that we can all see better a way forward.
All right, my name is Sam Herdlicka. This is a question about sports. How many points y'all think Shaq would average in the WNBA?
A lot.
All the points.
2019 Shaq or like 1998 Shaq? 2001 Shaq.
Yeah, that would be...
all he has to do is stand under the bucket. And then just, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, he's 7 foot.
Yeah, how do you get boards
one,
off of
300 pounds.
7 foot.
Feed Shaq the ball. Feed Shaq the ball. Feed Shaq the ball. That's the strategy at that point. I don't know. I have to do some math on that. How long are the games? average possession time. I don't know.
Hi, my name is Evan Jordan. I asked Mr. Franklin about when the U.S. might fall to the dynastic cycle, and his response was, if we don't get it together soon. And I guess I kind of want to see some more elaboration on that from Franklin's part, and maybe you three to give your take on it as well.
Okay, well, just to clarify, the soon is, I preface that with the idea that we don't have to fall to go through a dynastic process. The idea about a total collapse, like, we can reinvent ourselves, and that's one of the beautiful things about our country, is that we can amend and grow and go on. Like, we're not the same country that we were 20 years ago, 50 years ago, 100 years ago. Like, we develop and we grow. And so I think that changing government or the processes that bring our leaders into place can be part of that. We don't have to be completely different, or someone has to take us over for that to be, right? Could we collapse? I don't know how easily that could actually happen. So I want to make sure I clarified what I said. So,
can you define collapse?
Right. Yeah. Well, okay. So when we study Dynastic Cycle from Chinese perspective, the idea is that there are these patterns that you can watch develop. Corruptive government that's not dealt with over time. You have bloated bureaucracy. People quit giving back to the public the way they should. You have a loss of faith in the leadership. You have multiple crises, maybe uprisings, and eventually maybe on the edge of bankruptcy because the systems can't keep up with the expenditures. A military complex that's way out of control and overpriced and ineffective, and the borderlands become insecure, and people can come in. And the next thing you know, Chinese dynasties fall, and so we apply that to other groups. You can see that same type of pattern. New groups take over, and we try to do that better. Better bureaucracy, safety and security, give things back to the people, public works, fairness and meritocracies, that kind of stuff. So I think that we're in an aging dynasty scenario where we have a lot of the warning signs in place. The bloated bureaucracy and the lack of faith in certain parts of the leadership, and do we believe in the reality that anybody can, is that American dream sort of scenario still alive? I don't know that that's true. Is there a tax burden on a lot of people that's very that's overly burdensome? Yeah. Are there a lot of people who are not paying their fair share of taxes? Yeah. So, I mean, where are we? How soon might we go through a similar collapse? Again, it sort of depends. Civil War would be one of those moments where we went through, and we were different after that than we were before it, even though the Union was preserved. So would we have to go through something like that to reset and then to move forward? I don't know. Maybe.
I would say in the system that we have as a government, it creates an opportunity for us to change that cycle. When you look at the other countries that have fallen, their dynasties have fallen, they're usually ruled by a single ruler that wasn't necessarily elected or whatever, took his power by however he took it. We have an opportunity here that we can change it, and I can see even just within my lifetime of voting cycles, very different leadership led to a different outcome of the country from cycle to cycle. So we very much could fall, but I think we have the opportunity to change that too.
Yeah, I think we have enough of to agree with you. I think we have enough of a feedback mechanism, and we have enough opportunities for things to be corrected and changed at this point that most of these other societies didn't have. That I think we're pretty safe for now.
I hope.
Okay, we have 3 students that have been standing here. Let's do rapid fire real quick. We won't be able to probably answer it as thoroughly, but we'll do our best to get all 3 of you in.
Okay, hello, I'm Des. We are undeniably heading towards an age of surveillance states where corporations are passing on our data and employing facial recognition software. So are we too comfortable, like, as citizens with being under constant scrutiny via algorithms for variant behavior? And what certain minorities or subpopulations may be under more of a threat than the rest of us?
That is not a rapid fire answer.
Surveillance state, for or against?
As history teachers, if there's not an FBI file on every single one of us, I would be really shocked.
Yeah.
I don't think I'm nearly interesting enough to have an FBI file. I don't believe anybody cares what I'm saying.
I think we've all opted in enough just on internet services that you almost have to just give up that part of secrecy in your life.
Yeah, when you agree to that big thing, it says, do you agree to, yes, let's agree, let's go. Who knows what it says? So iTunes, whatever it is that you agree to, it seems like we're moving into an age where maybe we're going to be viewing our privacy differently than we have in the past. I don't know.
Maybe best case scenario, it's not this diabolical, let's get the minorities. Maybe it's we can, I think that this constant marketing, like you'll never get away from ads. You'll always be targeted in that way so they can get money. I think that's more where it's going. That seems to be, that's where my head goes. So it's not is it diabolical in its own way? Yeah. But I don't know that it's like this ruthless, let's eliminate people, because they've got money that we could have now. So this corporate surveillance, I think, is more about, hey, let me do a better job of advertising to you. But I don't like that idea. I don't want to be advertised to every waking moment, you know?
And who knows what the next wave of technology, how that will shift again and what will be valuable.
If Big Brother wanted for your downfall, then they would lose their dollars, right?
That's true. Okay, next question.
Hey, I'm Connor Freeman, and I'd like to know, what do you think the future of Hong Kong protests are after Washington announced their support for protesters?
It's interesting to see it get politicized so quickly in America, whether you support the Hong Kong protesters or not. But it does seem to be maybe the most important thing going on in the world, and we're too obsessed with Trump to notice. But yeah, I don't know.
We did pass a resolution, and he signed it that promoted support for the Hong Kong protesters, and so China's been angry about that, but how far will that go? They're not going to go to war with us any quicker than we're going to go to war with them. But does it get darker for Hong Kong itself? I don't know. They just had elections, and so maybe that gets better. They went even more democratic in their electoral process. Does China respect that? We'll wait and see. I don't know.
All right. So that'll be one we'll wait and see on. Next question, last question.
My name is Mari Ford, and I just wanted to know if we as students are being mindful of our own mental health, or if we're just sacrificing that in order to just get ahead in academia.
Good question.
Are teenagers ever mindful of their mental health?
I think science, neuroscience are going to be making achievements in mental health. And I think with the opioid crisis, I think we're going to be pushed in that direction. Hopefully, we will learn more on how to manage that issue, especially among teenagers. When I was a kid, I didn't even know that was a thing. But now, of course, mental health, that's a huge issue, and it can have devastating consequences. And it seems to affect all ages. If you just look around Hot Springs, you can see mental health issues. So I don't know what the future of that holds. I do think people are more aware that is an issue, and it could be a very big problem in the end.
More aware of the fact that there's more to do than just say, well, A, get over it, or B, we lock you away.
Right.
like real therapies for people and processes so that they can develop coping mechanisms so that we don't have maybe where those issues that people are dealing with become gigantic obstacles in their lives and keep them from doing what they need to do in a productive manner. So I think that's the future of it.
Yeah, and I think students need to find stress relief ways, things they can do to take the pressure off. It's really difficult, too, when you have high-achieving students that feel so much pressure. There's definitely a crop of students at Lakeside that, that A means everything, this test means everything, and sometimes that perspective gets lost. Coping mechanisms, some way to de-stress and to realize that, okay, this test it doesn't define my life. But once again, those strategies are few and far between.
I think a lot of times students fail to appreciate how badly you can screw up and it still be okay, or how many times you can change your mind. I mean, I said I was never going to go to college. I said I was going to be a welder, and I ended up with a PhD. I mean, I've had like 4 careers. I still don't know what I want to be when I grow up.
I would have not taken my class. I mean, I couldn't have made it. And there's no way I'd be a teacher. There's no way I could be a teacher. I'm a teacher, so you never know what life will throw you.
Well, if you limit your possibilities by saying I will never do it, maybe you meant that at the time. My mother is an educator as well, and the people always when I was growing up, are you going to be a teacher? Are you going to be a teacher? I'm like, no, it doesn't appeal to me. Well, guess what? It did at a certain point, but I had to be open to the idea that it could be part of my life. But it was something I had to discover, and I think that's really kind of the key to it. Discover what possibilities are out there, but let them come, seek them out as well. But if a path closes, then look around. There's lots of other options. I had to learn that. I'm like, wow, okay, so this one thing isn't me. Too many people let their circumstances define them rather than take the initiative to define themselves and be who they want to be. But again, who are you? I think that if you have this concept that you have to be the same person your whole life, I think that's a mistake.
Yeah, one of my favorite things in a human being, a student, adult, or whatever, is open-minded curiosity. Someone who's curious and willing to change their mind if the evidence shows that. So we have way too many closed-minded people. So what Franklin said, I think, is advantageous. Try to keep your mind open. Try to look at things. I think this is what we teach. Try to look at things from both sides before you draw a line in the sand.
And if you hit some sort of wall or massive barrier, bounce.
All right. Okay, guys, thank you for a great podcast, and we will see you, I guess, after the first of the year. Goodbye.
Yep.